Today on Studio One, find out what mannequins reveal about body image. Also, runners across the country united to honor the victims of the Boston Marathon bombing. And we'll meet up with a teen who dove into the subject of solar power for a science project.
From the University of North Dakota, this is Studio One, celebrating 25 years.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Studio One. I'm Monty Cashel.
And I'm Ann Hook. Say, Monty, you hear that?
I hear nothing right now.
Well, I think I hear the call of the wild.
The call? Why do you hear the call of the wild?
Well, today on the show, we are going to be having a zoo education director, and she's going to be bringing an albino snapping turtle and some of its furry and feathered friends.
All right. And so, do we get to play with these animals?
Mm-hmm. She's going to talk about conservation and why we really should be keeping these animals around. So, yeah, we're going to get to play with them a little bit at the end of the show.
Should be a lot of fun. We'll look forward to that. Also on the show, mannequins may be silent decorations at stores, but they can send a loud message. Find out how one store's mannequin display has stirred up discussion about body image.
And marijuana, cocaine, and meth are some of the more well-known drugs. Nowadays, these drugs are being recreated. Later, we will talk to a police officer who works with synthetic drugs.
But first, here's today's news with Ali Strand.
Thanks, Monty and Ann. President Obama paid tribute at a Boston memorial service held Thursday in honor of the victims of the Boston Marathon bombing. He addressed in a speech to the interfaith service that there is a piece of Boston in me. Hundreds crowded outside the Cathedral of the Holy Cross on the city's south end to hear the president speak. This comes in the aftermath of the bombing that killed 3 people and injured over 170 more. Investigators are still seeking answers to the attack and its perpetrator. Obama declared that the people responsible for these acts of terror will be found. An envelope was intercepted at the U.S. Capitol's off-site mail facility on Tuesday. The letter tested positive for ricin, a highly toxic substance. Just a tiny amount of the substance, as small as the tip of a pen, can kill an adult. Once exposed to the poison, there is no antidote. The letter was addressed to the office of Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker. The suspect, Paul Kevin Curtis, was arrested Wednesday. Curtis has been charged with making threats against President Obama and sending letters to him and Senator Wicker. Originally, there were suspicions that this attempt was connected to the bombing in Boston, but now officials do not believe the 2 cases are linked. Parents have heard it for years. Family dinners can help their children avoid risky behaviors. But new research shows that frequent dinners help kids emotionally, bringing a whole new meaning to the phrase happy meal. The study was published in the Journal of Adolescent Health. It shows the effect of family dinners does not plateau after 3 or 4 dinners a week, but continues to increase. With each additional dinner, researchers found greater emotional well-being, fewer behavioral problems, and higher satisfaction of life regardless of family economics.
I think family dinners is just one part of it. If they're taking the time to make that a priority, they're probably spending other time together too as well.
Another part of the allure of family dinners is the ritual aspect. It helps provide a sense of structure and security, as well as a sense of belonging, especially for children. Although women are thought to have a stronger longing for children, a new study shows that men are more likely to feel depressed about being childless. Researchers at Keele University in England surveyed 27 men and 81 women without children. Half the men said they had experienced isolation due to not having kids. This is compared to only 27% of the women interviewed. Men were also more likely to feel sad, angry, and even jealous of others with kids. Women more often reported an emotional and biological yearning for children. In today's society, many women perceive themselves to have a specific body type. This can be reinforced through magazines, ads, and retail, but now some mannequins are causing a stir.
Halens, a clothing retailer in Sweden, received a virtual applause from social media users when this picture was posted to Facebook back in March. These mannequins were said to look like real women when the average size is 14. Many department stores use mannequin displays that are designed 6 inches taller and 6 sizes smaller than the average person.
What is the biggest thing that retailers are trying to do? Sell their clothes. But what are they also doing? They're selling an ideal of body image.
As weight continues to increase, mannequins represent fewer and fewer American women. Mannequins can send the message that a person needs a small frame to be taken seriously, to be famous, or just to be important. Some retailers have focused on promoting their clothing through the average size mannequin.
Women's department, it's mostly 6s. In women's sizes, it's 1X.
The mannequin manufacturer Display Sense has seen a 16% increase in sales for sizes 12 to 14 mannequins in 2012. They expect that number to increase over the next year.
I think that it could be helpful in showing the greater range of actual body types that we have.
Even though mannequins are fake, they are becoming more in touch with reality. I'm Kayla Newman, reporting for Studio One.
Some say the increasing popularity of singer-songwriter Adele and actress Christina Hendricks has made it easier for the public to embrace curves. And that's the news for now. Monty, Nan?
Thanks for that, Allie. Well, this is one of those springs, I think, that people will remember for a long time.
Enduring winter.
Yeah, it just keeps getting stretched longer and longer.
All right, well, we're going to talk more with Kellen Peters over in the weather studio about a traveling storm that's moving to the East Coast.
Thanks, Ann and Monty. Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. It's been a very interesting spring, to say the least, but a giant storm that's going on across a large part of the United States being affected by it started out in Colorado and Wyoming. This is a very strong Colorado low system that did occur. We have some snow totals here for you in the bottom of the foothills in Fort Collins and Boulder. Both of them saw well over 20 inches of snow. Estes Park got over 33 inches of snow. Virginia Dale over 43 inches of snow, and even other parts in the mountains recorded over 50 inches of snow. And yeah, obviously that's a large amount of snow, but that's exactly what they did need, because some parts in Colorado and Wyoming are still technically in a drought. So kind of interesting what's going on over there. But also the storm did continue to move east, and there's a large band of thunderstorms happening in that Great Lakes area. We will touch more about it, more specifically in Chicago later on in the show, but keep an eye on this low pressure system. It's going to continue to move northeastward with this strong cold front coming around, and this strong thunderstorms did include some hail, thunderstorms, and tornadoes that was happening down in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. So very severe weather going on. And then on the backside, this white area, that's your snowfall still occurring. That's in a large part of Minnesota and over even in South Dakota. Now, as of the 18th, also, this storm is continuing to move out east and to the northeast. Talking about any precipitation, all going to continue to be drier than average out west, but seeing any more precipitation, it's going to be in your Midwest and moving to the northeast and along that Atlantic coast. But the big one, however, with your temperature, central part of the United States, still going to be colder than average over the next week, stretching all the way from the northern part of the United States all the way to the south. Out west, so there's your different story, and a little bit out east for the state of Maine. But talking about temperatures, here's your weather question for this week. What is the latest date on record for reaching 50 degrees in Grand Forks? There's your range of dates ranging from the middle of April all the way to the end. So you're going to have to stick around a little bit later in the show to find out the answer.
All right, thanks, Ken. We'll have to see if the stuff we have now can beat that record.
Yeah, it will be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd like to beat that record. Be nice to get into the 50s and move on, get on some green grass. That would be good. All right, well, let's move on to some sports highlights, and Brian Gendro.
Thanks, Monty and Ann. The calendar says spring, but the outdoors say winter. With the Masters wrapping up this past weekend, it signals an unofficial start to the golf season. But the weather says otherwise, causing courses to lose revenue. This time last year, the temperature for mid-April was about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Due to a warmer than average winter, courses opened in early March. However, right now, many areas still have 5 inches of snow on the ground, leaving the links closed.
Well, we're completely dependent upon the weather, so here we are past the middle of April, and really no golf in sight for the next week or 10 days at least.
Some golfers are walking around the pro shop to help keep their mind at ease. After the snow melts, golf pros say it only takes a few days to dry out. It's now time for the Studio One Sports Trivia question. How many times have the Minnesota Wild been to the playoffs since their inaugural season? You have 4 choices there, and the answer to that one will be coming up later in the show. That's the sports for now. Monty and Ann?
Thanks, Brian. In a new film, a promising hip-hop artist is given the opportunity of a lifetime. But when her record producer puts her in a compromising position, she has to make a difficult choice. We'll preview the independent movie Philly Brown.
Also, drug dealers are taking things to a whole new playing field with science. Next, we'll talk to a police officer who knows the new ways drug dealers are selling their product.
Life is busy, but many professionals are finding ways to advance their career with a Master's in Business Administration at the University of North Dakota. Students attend UND online and on campus. The program is nationally recognized and emphasizes one-on-one with faculty. Find the title you deserve. Enroll today.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it, 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
Your source for news, weather, and entertainment. From the University of North Dakota, this is Studio One.
Marijuana has been studied since the 1960s. Recently, drug dealers are trying to recreate the drug. These types of drugs are called synthetic. Sergeant Travis Jacobson works with drug enforcement. Thanks for coming on the show today.
You bet.
Well, first of all, it's a pretty general question, but what are synthetic drugs?
What we mean when we talk about synthetic drugs is any drug or any compound that's put together to mimic what real drugs do. So like synthetic marijuana, it mimics what real marijuana does, but they can make it so it's kind of legal at the time.
They can make it. How do you make something like this?
Well, most synthetic drugs, there's a lot out there that are actually made for medicinal purposes in hospitals and such that are legitimate. But a lot of these are made in laboratories in other countries maybe, or in someone's basement. I mean, that's the scary part of the synthetic drug world.
Okay, and what are the big differences between the, I guess, illegal drugs that are out there for purchase and these synthetic drugs?
Well, the illegal drugs, I mean, a lot of people do know about, the methamphetamine and the cocaine, but your synthetic drugs do practically the same thing, but unfortunately, we don't know a lot about how the synthetic drugs are going to, make how a person will react to them, or long-term effects is a real big question that a lot of us have had. I mean, we won't know for 15 to 20 years maybe of what are the real long-term effects of using these synthetic drugs.
Do you get the same high as you do with real drugs with these?
It's from what the studies that I've read and people that I've talked to that I've dealt with that have used it, a lot of them say it is very similar. But like your synthetic marijuana, for example, can really react differently with different people depending on age, gender, depending on what brand they're using or smoking. It can affect you in different ways.
What are the legal consequences if you're caught with these synthetic drugs?
Well, right now in North Dakota, It's a C felony to be in possession or ingestion of a synthetic drug. The problem that we've run into is it takes a while for the law to catch up to them making the drugs, is what a lot of the issue has been.
So they're creating these things and it's changing and shifting so much it's hard to get a hold of? Is that what you mean by that?
Well, for example, let's say someone makes synthetic methamphetamine, which we refer to as like bath salts. They'll make their recipe, if you want to call it that, and then the law, maybe a new law will come out banning one of the substances that are in there, or banning the whole entire recipe. Well, then they'll just tweak their recipe enough to where it falls under, legal when it comes to the word of the law.
Sure. Well, and we have a picture of bath salts and what they look like. Describe what bath salts are.
It really is synthetic cocaine or synthetic methamphetamine. Usually comes in a powder form or maybe a small rock that can be, crushed into a powder.
And on the picture we see it, a package it would come in. That looks like a package you would see at a grocery store or something like that.
Yeah, they can be in like little Ziploc baggies. They can be in a twist top, like a small makeup container. It almost looks like, or a small box. Or there's literally hundreds and thousands of different brands out there, and a lot of this is coming from overseas.
Well, you talk about meth, and people make meth, right? People make these bath salts as well. So what's the difference between the two?
Well, I guess the big difference between the synthetic meth and the real meth is the process of making it. They'll find certain compounds or substances that when you mix it together is going to give you that same high. And what it boils down to is your molecular structure is very similar. Like remember in science class when you looked at the, when they drill on the board, you got the octagons and the lines and all that.
Yeah.
If you look at the two structures for the, the fake methamphetamine versus the real thing, there might be just one more line or one less line or one less hydrogen atom,
so
whatever.
Subtle changes.
Yeah, subtle changes.
Well, we also have a picture of synthetic marijuana, and I was looking at this picture earlier. It looks like a tobacco. It comes in little bags. So what is this compared to the normal marijuana that we know?
The synthetic marijuana does look a lot like the real marijuana, just at face value when you see it. But really all it is it's potpourri. And the only reason that it even has a substance is because most of these synthetic compounds or materials come in a liquid or an oil or a powder form. So they need something to that the substance can adhere to so they can roll it up and smoke it. And that's why the potpourri leaves. That's really all that is.
So it's like the vehicle to get it into the body.
Right, pretty much. Yep.
Okay. And how can they be sold? I mean, where do people find this stuff?
Well, a couple of years ago, it was very, very easy because the law hadn't caught up with what was going on, and they were just selling them in head shops or gas stations, depending on what state you're in. And then we had, North Dakota at least, had that, the Board of Pharmacy had put that emergency ban out, and then everything got pulled from the shelves. So, like I said, they changed the recipe just enough so it's considered legal.
Sure. And how can you tell if someone's using synthetic drugs? Is it a normal?
It's a learning process. I mean, there's no perfect scenario I can give you to say yes, that's what they're under the influence of. But the biggest thing that I have noticed personally when dealing with these people using is just very bizarre behavior.
Sure.
It's that behavior where you just look and think that someone might be just crazy, but it could definitely be synthetic drugs.
Well, one last question for you. Where do you see synthetic drugs fitting into the drug culture in the future?
Well, hopefully they're not fitting into the culture, at least used illicitly. I mean, medically, like I said before, I think there's a use for these drugs. But hopefully when legislation gets passed, if it does, it's going to make, at least in North Dakota, it's going to make it to where any substance that is taken to mimic the drug use will become illegal.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the information today. It's interesting stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Coming up, marathoners already demonstrate the strength of the human spirit. This year's Boston Marathon is no different. We'll introduce you to a group of runners who paid tribute to the victims of the bombing. Also, it's common for kids to participate in science fairs. We'll show you how one teen looks at this event as an opportunity to showcase his creativity. That's next.
Studio One closed captioning is underwritten in part by Options, your disability information source.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the woman.
My doctor tells me to play outside every day.
I see a physician assistant in my rural clinic. I'm glad that she's here.
But healthcare is changing.
Rural North Dakota communities face workforce shortages, particularly in primary care. The University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences addresses the state's healthcare needs by educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. We advocate for improved health in rural communities.
Your future depends on this moment. Take the path that leads to your future.
When a Latino girl's talent gets her noticed, it gives her and her family hope for the future. Philly Brown is a film about a young woman who is trying to make it. Philly Brown is a young hip-hop artist who is chasing her dream. Without her mother in prison, her father faces the challenge of making ends meet. Philly is tested when her dreams threaten to change who she is. She battles with the choice of helping her family and staying true to herself. Her father, played by Lou Diamond Phillips, says the film is a cultural touchstone.
It's a family that lives in East LA. It's a family that deals with a lot of the social ills that curse, our lower income families, drugs, violence, neighborhoods going to seed.
The independent film was directed by two filmmakers. Advice they give on such a venture includes work your tail off, laugh a lot, and do what you think is cool. Philly Brown opens in select theaters April 19th. Now it's time to look at the events happening in your area. Most kids dread the time of year when the science fair comes along. We met someone who took inspiration from his older brother and turned it into something he could call his own.
Mind over matter, snazzy shampoo, fishy medicine. Oh, the dreaded science fair. Some students may not enjoy this, but Sean Loken,
this cord can attach to my stationary breadboard,
is into it. He was inspired by his older brother.
I think he ended up comparing three different solar engines, Miller, the FLED, and the 1381. And I forget how that all went, but when I was younger, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Sean took his inspiration from his brother and dove into the topic of solar energy.
It's a different way of being able to produce energy.
Most kids struggled through constructing their science projects the night before. Sean says he has been working on his for more than 2 years. He says he's still not done.
You sometimes see a solar panel off the side of the road, right? They're usually stationary. Now, you want to get the most use out of your solar energy.
One of the most nerve-wracking parts of all of this has to be the moment of truth. As the fair judge approaches the table, students' nerves often approach their limit.
When we do judging, we're looking for a number of factors: creativity, how unique or novel is the project, how much effort has gone into it, is it the student's own work?
And most importantly of all, they look for, how can this apply to the real world?
Because after all, this fair may not be the real world, but it gives kids like Sean the opportunity to practice for the great things he may do in the future. With photographer Stephanie Shire, I'm Melissa Dooley, reporting for Studio One.
The top 2 projects from each region will advance to the International Science and Engineering Fair in Phoenix, Arizona. Coming up, the flooding of a river can cause millions of dollars of damage and stress at that same expense. We'll tell you how one city's investment keeps the public carefree during flood season. That story plus news, sports, and weather in the next half hour of Studio One.
Closed captioning for Studio One is underwritten in part by NDAD, helping others to help themselves.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
Life is busy, but many professionals are finding ways to advance their career with a Master's in Business Administration at the University of North Dakota. Students attend UND online and on campus. The program is nationally recognized and emphasizes one-on-one with faculty. Find the title you deserve. Enroll today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
From the University of North Dakota, celebrating 25 years, this is Studio One.
Welcome back to Studio One.
Thanks for joining us today. Well, I don't want to scare any recent, well, they're not college grads yet, but the college grads that will be recent college grads this spring. But CNN Money is saying that this is going to be the toughest job market of all time.
And with this economy already, it is a struggle out there to find jobs.
Yeah, and so we wanted to get out there and ask people who are already having careers and in the job market what their advice is for college graduates, and their advice will be coming up next in a little bit. Also in the 30 minutes coming up on Studio One, as technology develops, language barriers are disintegrating. Find out how online translators are shaping communication between nations.
Also, being a mom can come with challenges. We'll show you one group of moms that come together for a common purpose.
And many species are becoming endangered. Later, we will talk to a woman who is educating children on the importance of saving animals. But first, here's today's news with Ali Strand.
Thanks, Monty and Ann. A fertilizer plant in Texas exploded Wednesday night. It left wreckage and debris in West, a small town 75 miles south of Dallas. The cause of the explosion is unknown. Officials say there was no release of chemicals in the air. They estimate that 5 to 15 people might have been killed and more than 160 injured. The explosion of the plant was so strong that it registered 2.5 on the Richter scale. More than 2,000 people gathered to bid farewell to Margaret Thatcher. The funeral service was held at St. Paul's Cathedral in London on April 17th. The first female prime minister died of a stroke at the age of 87. Thatcher served from 1979 to 1990 under the Conservative Party. She was known as the Iron Lady for her personal and political toughness. Public figures like Queen Elizabeth II, current Prime Minister David Cameron, and former U.S. statesmen Dick Cheney and Henry Kissinger were in attendance. Thatcher received full military honors for her years of service. Kids are taught at an early age to look both ways before crossing the street. But due to their lack of perceptual skills, many children have difficulty reading traffic signals. Experiments done at the University of Idaho compared the traffic detection skills in 35 adults and 50 children. They listened to recordings of cars approaching at 5 to 15 and 25 miles per hour. The cars were detected significantly later and much closer by the children than the adults. An increase in the amount of crossing guards at schools is helping to combat this problem.
There was a lot of issues with kids just crossing the street anywhere, and cars were, coming to a screeching halt, and it was just a matter of time before there was going to be an injury.
Researchers say the detection skills begin to reach adult levels after the age of 10. More than 13,000 children in the U.S. are injured every year by vehicles while crossing the street. With new apps always available, many are turning to their smartphones for directions. But now California drivers could find their map app sending them straight to the courthouse. A recent ruling has prompted a change in the California Vehicle Code regarding the use of cell phones while driving. One driver argued that a ticket he received was wrongfully issued since he was only using his phone's mapping software. The judge sided against the appeal, saying the distraction would be present whether a driver was using the phone to make a call, send a text, or use its GPS. According to the state law, drivers can still use other GPS devices if they are routed beforehand and placed a certain distance from the driver. Learning a language is not easy, but because of new technology, you may never have to.
Whether in the classroom or in the real world, online translation websites are becoming more popular. However, when learning a language, teachers are becoming more concerned.
It does lull students into a sense of false confidence that they can rely on that if they haven't done their assignment.
Students around the world are starting to use sites such as Google Translate much more frequently. They're now doing a record 1 billion translations a day. Although helpful, some say to use caution when using these tools.
You have to know how to use it correctly. You can't just type in a big paragraph into Google Translate and expect it to be correct. So you have to understand the language and the mechanics of the language, but it is a helpful tool if you're learning a specific word.
One myth nowadays is that someone can learn a language solely through a translation website. While that would be ideal, professors argue that that theory is not accurate.
Students would need to have an advanced knowledge of the language already if they were to use the sites properly, because the sites, a computer can't feel, so a computer can't contextualize the translation.
Although translators may not help a person learn a language from scratch, it could benefit students with the baseline of knowledge.
They're not there to answer a question that you may have for like a translation or something. It is a helpful tool.
Although this tool may not be completely reliable now, like every technology, accuracy will increase with time. Reporting for Studio One, I'm Will Biernat.
Some professors say that translators will be incorporated into classroom settings down the road. And that's the news. Monty and Ann.
Thanks a lot, Allie. Well, I can attest to the fact that you need to know the language when you use those. I've put some things in there and it totally didn't translate.
And it's all about the context, too.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go back with Kellen Peters over in the weather studio, and he's going to explain with spring there does come some flooding.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity going on, specifically states around the Great Lakes area. Now, a giant storm has recently swept through parts of northern Illinois, and this storm has been just torrential downpours, and this area is already battling flooding just in general because of the melting snow. Now they're adding over 4 inches of rain on top of this. Now, this prompted a flood emergency declared in Cook County, where Chicago is located. And this storm was this big storm sweeping across the United States that included stretching all the way up from that Great Lakes to down to the Gulf Coast. So the storm was a very big storm affecting Chicago. So going out to Illinois, you can see that more than 4 inches of rain did fall in Chicago. That flood emergency was declared. And with all that melting snow on top of that 4 inches of rain that fell, brought 3.5 feet over the flood level above the normal. So very interesting what's going on. You might recall back in spring of 1997, a very historic flood happened in the Red River Valley that cost millions of dollars. City officials knew that something had to be done before this could ever happen again. With flood season just around the corner, some communities do more than just sandbag to prepare for rising water levels.
And we just had to do something to make sure that we remained viable. We just couldn't take the chance that we'd have another 1997 flood all over again.
The plan broke ground in June of 2000. 7 years later, the project was complete just in time for the 10-year anniversary. This extensive flood protection system is 10 miles long and cost over $400 million.
Really what we want to do is we don't want to inconvenience our residents. We want to make life as seamless as possible, even though there may be a high water event, even though we might be approaching what could be a record level flooding.
A common protection is earthen levees. These are built strong with compacted soil. Another noticeable piece to the flood protection is the brick walls placed around Grand Forks and East Grand Forks. They were placed in areas where the land is not stable enough for a levee. These walls can prevent up to 60 feet of water.
A lot of it depends on Mother Nature, and we're never quite certain what curve she's going to throw us. But we're prepared for, we hope, just about any kind of scenario so that no matter what happens, we're prepared.
Over the past flood seasons, the Red River has experienced some of the highest water levels in the nation. However, this protected community carries on their daily business without hardly even noticing. And city officials have a step-by-step procedure they must follow that depends on the water level when they are trying to make closures across the city. Which brings us back to our weather question of the week. And it is, what is the latest date on record for reaching 50 degrees in Grand Forks? Our answers are ranging anywhere from mid-April to the end of April, and the answer is actually C, April 21st. That happened back in 1904, so a record that maybe some people hope that is not going to be broken this spring.
No, we certainly hope it doesn't. Thanks, Kellen.
Thank you.
1904, that's a long-standing record, more than 100 years.
Over a century.
All right. Well, let's turn to sports one last time with Brian Gendro.
Thanks, Monty and Ann. In the aftermath of the attacks during the Boston Marathon, people around the country have been showing support in different ways. Many ran, not away from the news of the bombing, but because of it.
Finishing a marathon is an ultimate achievement for people in the running community. Martin Short qualified to run in the prestigious Boston Marathon, which was being held on Monday morning. Like previous marathons, Short finished, headed to recover, and began to plan a night of celebration. But he had no idea what runners behind him would experience.
And then you see this, and it's just like, you really can't understand it, believe it. It makes no sense.
As the attacks were being televised, family and fellow runners back home did not know if Short was okay.
And at the hotel for a little while, started getting all these phone calls, and asking if we're okay, and I'm like, yeah, we're fine. What's up? And then we found out that there was, explosions at the finish lines.
Short returned home Tuesday to find his fellow runners there to greet him. The Red River runners normally meet on Tuesday to simply be together and exercise. But on this Tuesday, they ran to pay tribute to the victims of the attack. The group of around 30 ran 2.62 miles to show support for those injured and pay their respects to the 3 lives lost.
We band together like a big family, and running is the common thread. Just knowing how emotional running can be and accomplishing races of any distance can be, running was the best thing that we could think of to commemorate the events of yesterday.
The attack on Boston will be in people's minds for a long time. Short and his group of runners are sticking together and taking it in stride. With photographer Kelby Leak, I'm Taylor Braith reporting for Studio One.
The Twitter hashtag #RunForBoston turned into a virtual meeting spot for runners across the country. People pounded the pavement to show solidarity with the victims, even for just a few miles. Now the answer to this week's Studio One sports trivia question: how many times have the Minnesota Wild been in the playoffs since they started in 2000? The answer is C, 3, and they are expected to make the playoffs this year for the first time since 2008. That's the sports. Monty and Ann?
Thanks, Brian. A new research report says class of 2013 college graduates will have a more difficult time finding jobs. We wanted your thoughts on advice you would give college grads going into a tough job market. Your answers are still to come.
Also, parenting can be rewarding and challenging. We'll show you one group of mothers who gather together in support of one common goal.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it. 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
Most people don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. My time clock is around the clock. My ideas are fresh, but they need research and development. My business plan includes marketing strategies, legal documents, and a budget. My startup became possible through mentorship, hands-on experience, and learning from experts in the field. The Center for Innovation has contributed to more than 400 University of North Dakota student startups. Come with an idea. Leave with a business.
From the University of North Dakota, celebrating 25 years. This is Studio One.
That was a shot of our studio audience today. Parenthood is life-changing. One organization impacts the lives of both mother and child.
Energy, excitement, and curiosity. That's what little boys like Easton are made of. He's your typical 4-year-old boy, full of questions.
Who are these people? Who do you put it in you? Do you ever use it?
Today, Easton and his mother are touring the fire station. Together, he and his mother Erica are part of something bigger than themselves that benefits both of them.
We just have a good relationship with most of them because we are all in the same circumstances of our lives.
Erica is part of an organization called Mothers of Preschoolers, or MOPS for short. No one knows what it's like to be a mom better than a mom herself. And just like Easton learns about fighting fires, his mother also has the opportunity to learn something from her group.
I think it's really cool to be able to build relationships with other mamas at different points in their experience. Like some mamas give me really good advice.
There are mothers from all different backgrounds that come together for a common purpose.
It's just really encouraging to have that support system.
This is some advice Erica has to give to new parents.
Get involved in something, if it's MOPS or if it's some other group. It's so vital for the kids just to have the playtime together. All right, you two. That is quite enough.
Kind of cool, huh?
Although the playdates are fun for the kids, there is much more to MOPS. From monthly meetings to Mom's Night Out, there's always something on their family plate. I'm Katie Wilson, reporting for Studio One.
MOPS is for all mothers with children ranging from conception through kindergarten. The organization exists to encourage every mother to realize her potential as a woman, mother, and leader. For more information or to find a MOPS group near you, visit mops.org. Unemployment remains high for young college graduates. The Economic Policy Institute says for those who will find jobs, many will probably have to settle for low-level positions. CNN Money reports young college grads who work full-time make more than $3,000 less each year than graduates did in 2000. That fact is adjusted for inflation. We wanted your thoughts on advice you would give college graduates entering a difficult job market.
Job markets nowadays, I guess, tell them to make sure that they've got maybe more than one degree to fall back on.
Best thing to do, I guess, would just be market yourself.
I would say be aware of the way you present yourself.
You'd have to ask yourself, do you really love what you're getting into? Because that'll help you best.
Try and get some experience in what they
think they want to do in life and go from there.
If you can't get a job in the major that you have chosen, that you're graduating with, to look around and be flexible.
Post-graduation, it's, the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Don't think anything's too menial of a job. People see that, and if you're willing to do any little thing, they're willing to give you a bump up and make sure you get somewhere.
A comment came in from our Facebook page from Seattle, Washington. Adam says finding employment is tough, so having real-world experience is key. School gives you a great base, but one truly needs to display what they can do in real life. Another from Minot, North Dakota, John says, if you choose your career based on what you are most naturally and effortlessly interested in, then your future is already secure. Don't just fill a seat, go be the best. You'll be fine. Still to come, we usually go to a zoo to visit animals. Next, we're going to have the zoo come to us. That's coming up next.
Studio One is a television show produced by students at the University of North Dakota.
You can be a part of the graphics team, the marketing team, news team, programming team, production team.
Training never ends.
You get to produce guests, you get to do the reporting side of it.
It's really worth the experience. You will not regret it.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it, 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
My doctor tells me to play outside every day.
I see a physician assistant in my rural clinic. I'm glad that she's here.
But healthcare is changing.
Rural North Dakota communities face workforce shortages, particularly in primary care. The University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences addresses the state's healthcare needs by educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. We advocate for improved health in rural communities.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the woman.
A live TV studio can sometimes be compared to a zoo. Today, it is more like that than ever.
Education director for the Red River Zoo, Leela Goulet, brought some of her furry and feathered friends to talk about conservation. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So could you go and describe a bit more about your job at the zoo?
I'm the director of education at the zoo, so I take care of everything educational, from running the camps to doing the educational components and our special events, to running our junior zookeeper program during the summers.
To coming on television.
To coming on television and bringing education animals.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this educational animal you have with you today.
Well, I figured I'd bring him because he's very unique. This is a snapping turtle. And he's actually not the color that he should be. He's actually an albino. And
so how common are these albino turtles?
They are not common at all in the wild. They basically get eaten right away because of their color. They don't camouflage very well. I'd say 1 in every 30,000 is actually albino.
So this is not like a special breed?
No.
This is an albino
yes,
turtle.
Just like we could have albino people and other albino species, it's an albino turtle.
Sure. And so how would you feed an albino snapping turtle?
He gets fed a diet of fish within his aquarium.
Okay.
So that's what he'd eat in the wild.
And how did you get him?
He was actually donated to us. So there was a clutch of eggs that was hatched, and someone decided to donate him to the zoo because he is so unique and he wouldn't make it in the wild.
So why is it white?
He's just actually missing a pigment called melanin. So it's not that he's actually white, it's that he's actually missing the pigments.
Well, and with albino species, I know that sometimes they need special care, like sunlight hurts them.
Exactly.
And things like that. Is it the same with?
Yep, if we're doing an outdoor program, we have to be careful. His skin and his eyes are more sensitive to the sun, so we need to kind of limit the amount of daylight that he's exposed to if we are taking him on an educational program that's outside.
Okay, so your zoo is involved in a program known as the Species Survival Plan. What does this accomplish?
So that's basically a program that's set up to breed endangered species in the wild, and they breed species that would not exist in the wild if it wasn't for this.
Okay. Well, we can go ahead and Elizabeth
I'm gonna
over there is
hand
going
him
to
off.
grab the turtle.
Perfect.
And also, Leela, what is your personal favorite, animal to work with?
I'm kind of biased. I do love birds of prey, so I love the animals that actually hunt for food.
And are we going to be seeing one of those on the show today?
We will. He's actually our last one. But first, I thought I'd bring out our furry friend.
Oh, wow.
This is probably, you could pet him if you'd like. Okay. This is a chinchilla. It's called a long-tailed chinchilla. And they're probably one of the softest animals you'll ever touch.
Amazingly soft.
Yeah.
So now you were talking about birds of prey. I'm assuming this little guy
He would probably be a good prey for an eagle, yes, unfortunately. These guys have very soft fur. We have one hair follicle, 1 hair per follicle, and these guys have 50 to 60.
In each follicle?
In each follicle.
Wow.
Yep.
So can you have these animals as pets?
They do. They do make good pets. They do require a lot of care. They need to have a dust bath a couple times a week. We give it to them every day.
So how does that work?
So basically I fill a little bath, a little bowl, let's say, with a special ground dust, and they rub themselves all over, and it actually defends themselves from parasites, and it actually keeps them clean. Yeah.
So how do these compare to other types of rodents, such as like rabbits or guinea pigs?
In terms of what? Just in terms of
for pets?
I find them very fast and skittish, so they do need a lot of exercise. We let them run around every day, whereas rabbits can be a lot calmer. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's put him back in the cage and get to your favorite then.
My favorite.
You brought a raptor today.
I did. Don't get too excited. He's actually the smallest raptor that exists
but he's still quite
in North America. He's an awesome little hunter. He's actually one of my favorites. And hopefully he will make a sound when he comes out. He might fly out here. Let's see if we get him out here. There we go.
Wow.
So this is Clyde. He does have a name. It's okay. He's attached. I thought he was going to call.
So how do you feed this guy in captivity?
So they get a mixed diet of bird of prey, which is kind of like ground meat made specially for the bird of prey. And they also get frozen mice.
Would you ever release this bird then?
He's unreleasable at this point because he spent so much time at our zoo, he wouldn't know how to hunt in the wild. And this is an American kestrel. I don't think I said that. But
yeah, and where would you find an American kestrel? Usually?
Everywhere. I saw 4 of them driving down from the zoo till here.
Really?
Yeah, they're all around Fargo. They're all distributed over North America.
Okay. And they hunt what? If they're the smallest raptor, what do they hunt?
They're awesome at hunting mice.
Okay.
They have excellent vision. They will hunt birds and catch them in the air. They have the ability to hover. So they...
You would think with the size of this guy, a mouse would feed him for like a week.
He gets 1 mouse a day.
Wow.
And so does he use his talons for this?
It's exactly what he does, and then he tears it with his sharp beak.
So really, Layla, you describe, you have such a good bond with these animals. Really, how did you know this was your calling?
Oh, I think when you know, you just know. When I'm with them, I just feel fulfilled, and I think it's one of the best jobs in the world.
When people bring animals and then you can release them, is it tough releasing them after?
It's bittersweet because on one hand, you love to have them for education, to educate people about them, but on the other hand, you're happy that they get to return to where they're supposed to be in the wild.
All right.
Well, we're so happy you came
thank you so much for
shared with
having
us. And we'll make sure that he's happy through the break as well. All right, you're watching Studio One from the University of North Dakota. We'll be back right after this.
Closed captioning for Studio One is underwritten in part by NDAD, helping others to help themselves.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the woman.
Most people don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. My time clock is around the clock. My ideas are fresh, but they need research and development. My business plan includes marketing strategies, legal documents, and a budget. My startup became possible through mentorship, hands-on experience, and learning from experts in the field. The Center for Innovation has contributed to more than 400 University of North Dakota student startups. Come with an idea. Leave with a business.
Studio One is a television show produced by students at the University of North Dakota.
You can be a part of the graphics team, the marketing team, news team, programming team, production team.
Training never ends.
You get to produce guests, you get to do the reporting side of it.
It's really worth the experience. You will not regret it.
Tune in next week on Studio One. We're going to hear a teen violinist play for his audience at a unique location. Plus, we'll have other news and entertainment stories for you.
And we're going to leave you now with pictures of Native American dancers at the University of North Dakota. From all of us here at Studio One, have a great week.